Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross, and today I'm going to be discussing Tyranid datasheets, really just highlighting 5 key units that I really liked. Now, one thing of preference is that I've not tried out all these units yet. We don't have all the information quite yet on them, specifically on points, so I've not had a chance yet, but I've had a look over the rules and really things that I do quite like about them. Now, one thing I'd say is that this was actually tougher than I thought. There are quite a few units there that I can see do have quite a bit of use, and they've got different utilities that they can fulfill. And so I had to make a hard line on the ones I liked, the ones that I didn't like, and the ones I had to cut from this. And so don't expect me to, you will probably have different opinions to myself. You might go, well, I think this one does better in that regard, and maybe the math might prove that as well. But as my initial sort of takes in here are 5 units I think that I quite liked in my initial look of the Tyranid datasheets. Let's start off with an old channel favourite, and that is the Exocrine. So the Exocrine has movement 8, toughness 10, save 3+, wounds 14, leadership 8+, and obsec 4. It is armed with bioplasmic cannon, which is 36 inches, attacks d6 plus 3, bliss skill 3+, strength 8, AP minus 3, damage 3, and blast and heavy. It has powerful limbs, which is melee, attacks 3, weapon skill 3+, strength 7, AP 0, damage 2. It has Synapse, but it doesn't have the keyword, and Deadly Demise D3, and when wounds remaining 1 to 5 is -1 to hit. And a special rule, Symbiotic Targeting, which is in the shooting phase. After this unit shoots, select a unit they hit. Until the end of the phase, any Tyranid units that targets that unit rerolls 1 to hit. So one thing I'd say when it comes to large creatures, monsters, vehicles, etc. is that there are a number of weapons we have seen that when they do hit hard, they hit very hard, and they may be, quite frankly, the death of big creatures. So maybe we might see a little bit, if you don't have any damage mitigation or bodyguards, you might not see them as useful. However, I did want to include this one because I did want to include many of the big creatures, and when it came to ranged ones, it was really between this and the Tyranids. Now, going to why I sort of edged towards the Exocrine, is that it's still a powerful gun platform, especially against sort of mid to high toughness infantry. The d6 plus 3 attacks will give you quite a number of nice attacks. It's good strength at 8, AP minus 3, which is great, and damage 3, which will get through some of the more higher wounded infantry models. With heavy, it'll give it more accuracy if it stays still, and blast is if those units are a bit more higher in volume of the amount of models in the unit, it'll get extra attacks. So that's really good, but also we have the symbiotic targeting, and that's really fantastic ability in that it adds a solid, I suppose, debuff to the enemy, buff to yourself, in that that unit now becomes more fragile to other ranged attacks. Possibly that you just need to tag that unit for other units to become more accurate against it. You don't even need to cause damage, it just needs a hit against it, which I think is a really, really solid ability. Even just one of these will then augment your army quite well if you have a lot of ranged units. Now, Tyranids itself is actually really can be quite destructive. I think is that the Rupture Cannon is a really deadly weapon in itself. It's a low amount of attacks, but my goodness, if it is going against other large things that you might focus fire on, it will do a sizable amount of damage. So I suppose it can be argued in certain games you might just take Tyranids and that be that. You don't really need the Exocrine for that. The Exocrine can help out clear out some of the harder infantry, which might be a bit more difficult to move, and if it can't do that, it can at least make other units more accurate against those units you want to bring down. So I edged towards the Exocrine because I think even one of these in an army will see value, even if it just tags a unit or if it's taken out some other of the heavier infantry. I think it's solid. I thought that one was really good. It was between that and the Tyranids for the sort of big monster ranged weaponry, and I'd be interested to see what people think on that one. But as the Exocrine has been an old channel favourite, I decided to put that in this spot. On to a new unit within the Leviathan box set, we have the Von Ryan Leapers. So their stats are movement 10, toughness 5, save 4+, wounds 3, leadership 8+, obsec 1, and invul 6+. They have Leaper Talons, which are melee weapons, attack 6, weapon skill 3+, strength 5, AP minus 1, and damage 1. They are Synapse, but not the keyword, fight first, infiltrators, and stealth, and they have the Pouncing Leap, which can use heroic intervention for 0 command points, even if it has already been used this turn. So, I mentioned in the Leviathan video that it really was going to come down to what is the better sort of infiltrator unit when it comes to Von Ryan Leapers and Lictors. And I've decided to go with the Von Ryan Leapers for some reasons. I think points may decide in this one. I like the fact that they are a unit, it isn't just one model. And well, also I did want to include one of the Leviathan units that I thought were really cool, because I love the Von Ryan Leaper models. They are faster with 10-inch movement, and they can use the Heroic Intervention stratagem, which I think for free is better than the Lictors, who can use Rapid Ingress stratagem. Essentially, when you've got the Infiltrator rule, I find that you really want these units to be up in your opponent's face, really exploiting either objectives that are not they have ignored, or that your opponent has essentially done something not so ideal with their deployment. These guys can really exploit it, and with that extra 2-inch movement and along with Heroic Intervention, I think there's a lot of potential there. Now, one thing to say in the Lictor, it does have Lone Operative, which will help it survive sort of longer ranged weaponry against it at a distance. And the other thing the Lictor does have is it damages more damage too. It has precision for taking out characters and a better invul save. So it really comes down to what do you want these units to do more. I want these units to really be disruptive. The Lictor can do well at maybe taking down characters, but I don't think it can do it so well. It has to really get that right positioning to get it done there to assassinate. Well, these guys, or Lictors in general, I think are better disruptive units. I think they just need to, in turn 1, do what they need to do and really hurt your opponent there. And I just find that the extra movement and the Heroic Intervention really moves me a little bit, siding towards the Von Ryan Leapers. I think points will decide a little bit further on that one once I see them. But yeah, I like the Von Ryan Leapers, I think they're cool models, and it depends what people think. Do the Von Ryan Leapers win over Lictors? Let me know. Next, I'm going to look at a large creature more designed for combat, and there was a lot of choices here, so it's hard to choose which one I felt was really highlighted to me, something that was either unique or looked really, really cool, or something that really did offer something different, or did the whole melee side well. And I came up with a Haruspex when it came to this one. So its movement is 8, toughness 11, save 3+, wounds 14, leadership 8+, and obsec 4. It has the Grasping Tongue, which is 12 inches, attack 1, bless skill 3+, strength 6, AP -2, damage d6+1, and precision. It has the Ravenous Maw, which is a melee, attack 14, weapon skill 3+, strength 7, AP -1, damage 2, and then Shoveling Claws, which are melee, attacks 4, weapon skill 3+, strength 14, attacks -2, damage d6+1, and they are extra attacks. It's Synapse, no keyword, and Deadly Demise D3. And when wounds remaining 1 to 5, then it is -1 to it. It has the Grizzly Spectacle ability, which is after this model fights. After all attacks, if you destroy an enemy unit, each enemy unit within 6 inches must take a battle shock test. So what I really liked about this was a few things. One was the Grasping Maw. It's a single attack, so not the most reliable on that side, but it will come to that really epic moment in a game where you will have this succeed, where it will suddenly bring out this giant tongue, tentacle, or grasping maw, I guess, or whatever, and grab a character and essentially devour it, which will be absolutely excellent when it does go off. I think as an area that you may enjoy in the game when something exceptional happens, if this goes off, because it has precision, it'll be absolutely fantastic. So I'd love to see moments when this goes off and suddenly your opponent has maybe a unit with a character being protected behind it, and then this grasps out and grabs the character and devours it. It's going to be cool. In combat, you're unleashing, I think, a blistering 18 attacks, 14 of them being damage 2, and the Shoveling Claws being d6+1, which allows a lot of potential here that you can take out mid-toughness stuff with that damage 2. It's a bit of a lower strength, though not by much. I mean, it's still strength 7, lower AP though. But then you've also got a Shoveling Claws to maybe take out some of the more harder units. It's strength 14 and d6+1 damage, a little bit swingy there, but that is a lot of damage potential just from extra attacks. And as I said, that is 18 attacks in total. There are a lot of creatures when it comes to big combat orientated monsters within the Tyranid Codex. Haruspex for now is getting my vote. On to my next selection, and I wanted to have a look at some of the chaff units within the Tyranid Codex, the ones that you might be feeling many of them and having a hard time painting because there could be potentially up to 100 of them. And I came across their Hormagaunts as the unit that I sort of eyed best. So their stats are movement 10, toughness 3, save 5+, wounds 1, leadership 8+, and obsec 2. They are armed with Hormagaunt talons, which are melee, attacks 3, weapon skill 4+, strength 3, AP -1, and damage 1. They have synapse, though not the keyword. And bounding leap, this unit can charge in a turn it advanced. So, I personally prefer my chaff to be cheap and armed for combat so they can contest objectives. Other units that may be cheap but are ranged really aren't ideal for me. I rely on other units to do range damage. I want these units to be thrown in and at least do their best to try and take over an objective. If they succeed, great. If they don't, well, they were cheap. Although points, as I said, will determine them, they will dive in droves, so again affordable. They are blindingly fast at 10-inch movement and able to advance and charge, giving them a huge disruption range where they can threaten an objective or one that your opponent may be putting some light units on, hoping to score. These guys can maybe run over there and catch them out. Also thought it was really good that they have -1 AP. That might be a little bit... AP in this is something that we're not going to see as much anymore, I believe. It is getting reduced a wee bit. So to see Hormagaunts with essentially -1 AP, I thought it was a bit of a surprise, but hey, it does make them a little bit more effective on that side. And likely the most use for them is objective holders. They may need to be with a fast synapse creature. Reason being is that if they do fail a battle shock test, then they're going to have a hard time holding objectives, if not at all. So yeah, you might want to think about having a synapse creature nearby just to give them that little bit extra. But really, these are the unit that your opponent's either going to have to deal with, or they're just going to be a real nuisance taking over objectives. So yeah, I really like Hormagaunts. Fulfilled all the needs I need for a chaff. They are cheap, they can get into combat, and if they die, I'm not really bothered by it. And my final unit to highlight is the Maleceptor. So the Maleceptor has movement of 8, toughness of 11, save 3+, wounds 14, leadership 7+, obsec 4, and a 4+ invul save. As Psychic Overload, which is an 18-inch weapon, attacks d6+3, bliss skill 3+, strength 10, AP -2, and damage 3, is Blast and Psychic. Massive Scything Talons with a strike ability is melee, attacks 3, weapon skill 3+, strength 9, AP -2, damage d6+1. And then the Massive Scything Talons have the option of sweep, which is melee, attack 6, weapon skill 3+, strength 7, AP -1, and damage 2. His Synapse with the keywords Deadly Demise D3 and Shadow in the Warp. And wounds remaining 1 to 5 is that it has -1 to hit. And then it has the ability Insphilic Diffusion, which is an aura ability, which is psychic, 6-inch aura. Enemy units suffer -1 to hit, and if unit is below half strength, is -1 to wound as well. So the Maleceptor, I feel, has a lot going for it to help lead into the charge. Firstly, it is a synapse creature, so it is going to help all those units around it survive battle shock, which you might need a few of those around you, also handy for stratagems. And it has a 4-up invul save, which will help it survive as well. Its Psychic Overlord has a generous 18-inch attack. I'd imagine, really, I thought that would maybe be 12 inches, but 18 inches. It has a random amount of attacks, though still quite a few. I suppose the d6+3 is quite nice. High strength, decent AP, and high damage along with blast, which really makes it quite a threat to high toughness infantry units. In combat, it does have the option of the strike and the sweep options, though I would probably say that other units will probably do better in this regard, but it does have the valuable idea of it being optional. You can choose between them. Some units don't have that. They either do really destroying big things quite well, they maybe don't take out chaff or large infantry so well. This unit can actually play both those fields quite well. So overall, I'd say for this unit is that there's a lot of areas that it does surprisingly really well, and the areas it does not excel in, it still does them sufficiently well. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see the points in this. But if you're looking for a synapse creature that can do a good debuff to enemy, a little bit of fair bit of damage with ranged, and keep itself in combat, then yeah, you may be looking at the Maleceptor for that role. And that is it for my key highlights of 5 units within the Tyranid datasheets. Let me know what you think. I think there's going to be a few areas people are going to disagree with, some people might agree with, mainly because Tyranids do have a lot of useful units within it, and they have a number of units that do overlap in some regards as well, so it's working out which one is the most effective for certain situations. Very intrigued to hear what people have to say on the Tyranid side, just because I thought they were a very interesting read when it came to their index and seeing all the units there. So I want to know what the NID players feel. Are they happy with the results? Let me know. Comment, share, like and subscribe, and I'll see you on another Tabletop Assault Battle Report.